Welcome back to the Fluent Storybook, where we unlock your English fluency through the power of storytelling. I'm your host, and today we're taking a journey to the heart of New England. To a small town in Vermont where the autumn leaves paint the mountains in brilliant reds and golds, and where one immigrant family's story perfectly captures what we call the American dream. Today's story will not only entertain you, but will also teach you essential English vocabulary, idioms, and cultural insights that will make you sound more like a native speaker. We'll explore themes of perseverance, community, and the pursuit of happiness that resonate deeply with American values. So grab your favorite cup of coffee, settle in, and let's begin our linguistic adventure. Before we dive into our main story, let me introduce you to some key vocabulary and expressions you'll encounter today. These aren't just random words. They're carefully chosen because they appear frequently in American English and will significantly boost your conversational skills. First, we have the American dream. This phrase refers to the ideal that every person should have an equal opportunity to achieve success and prosperity through hard work, determination, and initiative. It's been a cornerstone of American culture since the country's founding, and you'll hear this expression in political speeches, movies, books, and everyday conversations. Next, we'll encounter starting from scratch, which means beginning something completely new, without any previous experience or resources. Americans love this concept because it embodies the entrepreneurial spirit that built the nation. You might hear someone say, after the fire destroyed everything, they had to start their business from scratch. We'll also explore pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, an idiom that means improving your situation through your own efforts without help from others. This expression is uniquely American and reflects the cultural value placed on self-reliance and personal responsibility. Another important phrase is small-town values, referring to the traditional American ideals often associated with rural communities: honesty, hard work, neighborliness, and community spirit. Even Americans who live in big cities often speak fondly of small-town values. Finally, we'll learn about paying it forward, which means responding to a person's kindness by being kind to someone else. This concept has become deeply embedded in American culture, especially after the popular movie of the same name. Our story begins in the small town of Woodstock, Vermont, population 3,048, where the main street is lined with historic buildings and maple trees that have witnessed over 2 centuries of American history. It's October 2019, and the town is preparing for its annual Harvest Festival, a tradition that brings together locals and tourists to celebrate the changing seasons with apple cider, pumpkin pie, and the spectacular fall foliage that makes Vermont famous worldwide. Maria Santos arrived in Woodstock 3 years earlier with nothing but 2 suitcases, a heart full of dreams, and a recipe for empanadas that her grandmother had passed down through 4 generations. She had left her home in Guatemala, not because she wanted to abandon her roots, but because she believed in something that millions of people around the world associate with America: the possibility of creating a better life through hard work and determination. Early days were anything but easy. Maria's English was limited to basic phrases she had learned from an old textbook, and she struggled with the New England accent that made even simple conversations feel like solving puzzles. She took a job cleaning offices at night and spent her days studying English at the local community college. where patient teachers helped her navigate the complexities of American grammar and pronunciation. What struck Maria most about Woodstock wasn't just its postcard perfect beauty, but the way neighbors looked out for each other. When Mrs. Henderson from the grocery store noticed that Maria always bought the same basic ingredients, she started leaving recipe suggestions written in simple English. When Tom, the mechanic, learned that Maria was walking 3 miles to work because she couldn't afford car repairs, he fixed her old Honda for free and told her to pay it forward when you can. These acts of kindness weren't unusual in Woodstock. They reflected something deeper about American community life, especially in small towns where people still believe that helping your neighbor isn't just nice, it's the right thing to do. This spirit of mutual support has been a constant throughout American history. From barn-raising parties in the 1800s to community responses to natural disasters today. Maria's breakthrough came during her second winter in Vermont. The community college was hosting a multicultural night, and students were encouraged to share something from their heritage. Maria was terrified. Her English still felt clumsy, and she worried that people wouldn't understand her accent or appreciate her culture. But her teacher, Ms. Roberts, convinced her to participate by saying something that would become Maria's motto. Your story matters, and Woodstock needs to hear it. That evening, Maria stood before a crowd of 50 people, farmers, teachers, retirees, and fellow students, and told them about her grandmother's empanadas. She explained how the recipe had traveled from Spain to Guatemala, how each family had added their own touches over the generations, and how food could carry love across oceans and borders. Her hands shook as she spoke, but her passion was unmistakable. The response was overwhelming. People didn't just clap. They asked questions, requested the recipe, and wondered if Maria would consider making empanadas for local events. That night, several people approached her with business advice, offers to help with permits, and encouragement to consider opening a small restaurant or food cart. This is where Maria's story illustrates a beautiful aspect of American culture, the willingness to help entrepreneurs, especially those who are starting from scratch. Americans tend to admire people who take risks to build something new, and they often go out of their way to support local businesses, particularly those that add diversity and character to their communities. Over the following months, Maria began making empanadas for local events. She started small, selling them at the farmer's market on Saturday mornings from a simple table with a handwritten sign. The response was incredible. Customers would line up not just for the delicious food, but for the warm conversations that happened while Maria prepared their orders. She had a gift for making people feel welcome, asking about their families, remembering their preferences, and sharing stories about the ingredients she used. The success at the farmer's market led to catering requests for birthday parties, office lunches, and community gatherings. Maria was working 18-hour days, but she had never been happier. She was building something of her own, contributing to her adopted community, and proving to herself that the American dream wasn't just a slogan, it was something real and achievable. The next major turning point came when the owner of a small building on Main Street approached Maria with an unusual proposition. The space had been empty for 2 years after the previous tenant, a bookstore, had closed down. The landlord, Jim Patterson, had watched Maria's success at the farmer's market and believed she was ready for the next step. Instead of demanding a large security deposit that Maria couldn't afford, he offered her a rent-to-own arrangement that would allow her to eventually purchase the building. This kind of creative financing arrangement reflects another aspect of American business culture, the willingness to take calculated risks on people who demonstrate character and work ethic. Jim later explained his decision. I could see that Maria wasn't just trying to make money. She was building relationships, contributing to our community, and working harder than anyone I knew. Sometimes you invest in the person, not just the business plan. The transformation of the empty storefront into Abuela's kitchen became a community project. Local contractors offered services at cost. Neighbors volunteered to help with painting and decorating. And the high school Spanish class created beautiful murals that celebrated both Vermont and Guatemalan cultures. The restaurant's grand opening in September 2022 felt like a town-wide celebration. Abuela's kitchen quickly became more than just a restaurant. It became a gathering place where different cultures met and mingled over shared meals. Maria's menu expanded beyond empanadas to include Vermont ingredients prepared with Guatemalan techniques. Her maple-glazed pork with black beans became legendary, as did her pumpkin empanadas that perfectly captured the essence of New England autumn. What made the restaurant special wasn't just the food, but the atmosphere Maria created. She hired local high school students, teaching them not just job skills, but also Spanish phrases and stories about Guatemala. She partnered with the elementary school to host cultural exchange lunches where students could practice Spanish while learning about different traditions. She began offering cooking classes that brought together longtime Woodstock residents and newer immigrants from various countries. The success of Abuela's Kitchen attracted attention beyond Woodstock. Food bloggers from Burlington and Boston wrote glowing reviews, and travel magazines began featuring the restaurant in articles about authentic ethnic food in small American towns. But Maria never forgot the people who had helped her along the way. She established a tradition of providing free meals for volunteer firefighters, offered employment opportunities to other immigrants learning English, and sponsored a scholarship for students pursuing culinary arts. This practice of giving back once you've achieved success is deeply embedded in American culture. It reflects the belief that individual success is connected to community well-being, and that those who benefit from opportunities should create opportunities for others. Maria's approach to success exemplified what Americans call paying it forward, helping others not because they've helped you, but because you've been helped and want to continue the cycle of generosity. The story reaches its climax during the October 2023 Harvest Festival, exactly 4 years after Maria first arrived in Woodstock. The town decided to honor her as the festival's Grand Marshal, recognizing not just her business success, but her contributions to the community's cultural richness and economic vitality. As Maria rode in the parade, waving to the crowds who had become her extended family, she reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. In her acceptance speech at the festival dinner, Maria spoke about the true meaning of the American dream. She explained that it wasn't just about individual success or material prosperity, but about the opportunity to contribute to something bigger than yourself. America gave me the chance to build a new life, she said. But Woodstock gave me the chance to build a new home. Her words resonated because they captured something essential about the American experience, the idea that success is measured not just by what you achieve for yourself, but by what you contribute to your community and how you help others achieve their own dreams. Cultural analysis and language. Learning Points Maria's story provides us with numerous insights into American culture and valuable language learning opportunities. Let's explore some of the key cultural concepts that emerge from this narrative and examine how understanding these concepts can improve your English. Fluency and cultural literacy. The concept of the American dream is central to understanding American society and appears constantly in American media, politics, and everyday conversation. When Americans talk about the American dream, they're usually referring to the belief that anyone, regardless of their background, can achieve success through hard work and determination. This idea has shaped American immigration policy, business practices, and social attitudes for centuries. Understanding this concept helps you participate in discussions about opportunity, success, and social mobility that are common in American discourse. The phrase "starting from scratch" is particularly important because it reflects the American admiration for entrepreneurship and self-made success. Americans love stories about people who build something from nothing, whether it's a business, a career, or a new life in a new country. This expression appears frequently in business contexts, personal development discussions, and motivational speeches. You might hear it in sentences like, "After the economic downturn, many people had to start their careers from scratch," or "the company was successful because the founders weren't afraid to start from scratch with a completely new approach." Small-town values represent an idealized version of American community life that influences how Americans think about society even in urban areas. These values include neighborliness, self-reliance, hard work, honesty, and community involvement. Even Americans who have never lived in small towns often reference these values when discussing what they believe America should aspire to be. Politicians frequently appeal to small-town values in their campaigns, and businesses often try to create atmospheres that evoke small-town friendliness and personal service. The practice of paying it forward has become increasingly important in American culture, especially since the early 2000s. This concept encourages people to help others not as repayment for help they've received, but as a way of continuing a cycle of generosity. The phrase appears in contexts ranging from coffee shop signs saying, "Pay it forward board," to corporate social responsibility programs, to personal development books. Understanding this concept helps you participate in discussions about community responsibility and social cohesion. From a language learning perspective, Maria's story demonstrates several important aspects of English usage in American contexts. First, it shows how Americans use storytelling to convey values and build connections. Americans often share personal anecdotes to illustrate points, build rapport, and demonstrate shared values. Learning to tell stories effectively in English, including using appropriate transitions, descriptive language, and cultural references, will significantly improve your ability to connect with American speakers. The story also demonstrates the importance of understanding regional variations in American English. Maria's struggle with the New England accent reflects the reality that American English includes numerous regional dialects and accents. While standard American English is widely understood and used in media and education, local variations can be challenging for learners. Recognizing that these variations exist and learning to adapt to different accents and local expressions will make you a more effective communicator. Another important language point is the use of idiomatic expressions that carry cultural weight. Phrases like the American dream, starting from scratch, and paying it forward are more than just vocabulary items. They're cultural concepts that carry emotional and ideological significance. Learning these expressions and understanding their cultural context will help you participate more effectively in discussions about American life and values. The story also illustrates how Americans use food as a bridge between cultures. Food vocabulary and the ability to discuss culinary traditions, ingredients, and cooking methods can be powerful tools for building relationships and demonstrating cultural awareness. Maria's success partly stems from her ability to explain her grandmother's recipes and connect Guatemalan culinary traditions with Vermont ingredients and American tastes, extended vocabulary and expression. Analysis. Let's delve deeper into the vocabulary and expressions that appear throughout Maria's story, as these words and phrases represent essential elements of American English that will enhance your fluency and help you sound more natural in conversations. The phrase, postcard perfect, describes something so beautiful it looks like it could be on a postcard sent to tourists. This expression is commonly used to describe scenic American locations, particularly small towns, national parks, and historic sites. Americans often use this phrase when describing places they visited or recommending travel destinations. You might hear someone say, "We drove through this postcard-perfect town in Colorado," or "the wedding was held in a postcard-perfect garden." Fall foliage is a specifically American term for the colorful autumn, leaves that attract millions of tourists to New England each year. While other English speakers might say autumn leaves, Americans, particularly in the Northeast, use fall foliage to describe this natural phenomenon. The word foliage itself refers to plant leaves collectively, but in American usage, fall foliage has become a standard term for discussing autumn, tourism, and natural beauty. The expression, "heart full of dreams," is a poetic way to describe someone who is optimistic and hopeful about the future. This type of metaphorical language is common in American English, especially when telling stories or describing personal journeys. Americans often use body parts metaphorically to express emotions and attitudes. Heart full of dreams, head in the clouds, feet on the ground, or eyes on the prize. Barn-raising parties refers to a historical American tradition where community members would gather to help build a barn for a neighbor. This concept represents the American ideal of community cooperation and mutual support. While actual barn-raising parties are now rare, Americans still reference this tradition when discussing community spirit and collaborative effort. You might hear someone say, "This project needs a barn-raising approach," to suggest that everyone should contribute to a common goal. The phrase calculated risk describes a risk that someone takes after careful consideration of the potential benefits and dangers. This expression is frequently used in business contexts and reflects the American cultural appreciation for entrepreneurship and strategic thinking. Americans often discuss taking calculated risks in their careers, investments, and personal decisions. The word calculated emphasizes that the risk isn't reckless, but is based on careful analysis. At cost means selling something for exactly what it costs to make or provide, without adding profit. This expression often appears in contexts involving charity or community support, where someone provides goods or services without making money to help others. You might hear, "The contractor did the work at cost because it was for a good cause," or "we're selling these items at cost to help the school fundraiser. The term Grand Marshal refers to the person chosen to lead or be honored in a parade. This is a uniquely American tradition associated with parades for holidays like the 4th of July, Memorial Day, or local festivals. The Grand Marshal is usually someone the community wants to honor for their contributions or achievements. Understanding this term helps you participate in discussions about American civic traditions and community celebrations. Extended family doesn't just refer to aunts, uncles, and cousins. In American usage, it often describes people who aren't blood relatives but are considered family due to close relationships and mutual support. Maria's reference to her community as extended family reflects how Americans often create family-like bonds with neighbors, friends, and community members. This concept is particularly important in American culture, where geographic mobility often separates people from their biological families. The phrase cultural literacy describes the knowledge of cultural references, traditions, and concepts that members of a society share. In American English education, cultural literacy includes understanding references to historical events, literary works, popular culture, and social concepts that appear regularly in American discourse. Developing cultural literacy is essential for English learners who want to understand not just the language but the cultural context in which it's used. Practical application exercises. Now that we've explored Maria's story and analyzed its cultural and linguistic elements, let's engage in some practical exercises that will help you internalize these concepts and improve your English fluency. These exercises are designed to move you from passive understanding to active use of the vocabulary, expressions, and cultural concepts we've discussed. First, let's practice storytelling techniques. Think about someone in your own life or community who represents determination and success. Using Maria's story as a model, create a brief narrative about this person that includes at least 5 of the expressions we've learned today. Focus on using transitional phrases that American speakers commonly use, such as, "What struck me most about the breakthrough came when this," is where the story illustrates, and the next major turning point was, "Your story should demonstrate your understanding of American narrative structure, which typically includes a clear beginning that establishes the character and setting, a middle section that presents challenges and growth, and a conclusion that shows transformation and often includes a lesson or broader meaning." Practice telling this story aloud, paying attention to your pronunciation of key phrases and your use of stress and intonation to emphasize important points. Next, let's work on cultural concept application. Choose 3 of the American cultural concepts we discussed: the American dream, small town values, paying it forward, calculated risks, or community spirit, and write a paragraph about how each concept appears in your own culture or experience. This exercise helps you build bridges between American cultural concepts and your own cultural background, which is essential for meaningful cross-cultural communication. For example, you might write about how the concept of community spirit appears in your hometown, comparing and contrasting it with the small-town values described in Maria's story. Or you might discuss how the idea of taking calculated risks is viewed in your culture versus American culture. This type of comparative analysis helps you participate more effectively in cross-cultural discussions and demonstrates sophisticated thinking about cultural differences and similarities. Let's also practice using idiomatic Expressions in context. Create 5 original sentences using the following expressions. Starting from scratch, paying it. Forward, at cost, postcard perfect, and extended family. Make sure your sentences demonstrate that you understand not just the literal meaning, but the cultural context in which these expressions are typically used. For instance, instead of simply writing, "He started from scratch," create a sentence that shows the cultural significance. After losing his job in the recession, David decided to start from scratch by going back to school and completely changing careers, which his friends admired as a typically American response to adversity. Another valuable exercise involves practicing the art of American small talk, which often includes references to cultural concepts and uses the types of expressions we've learned. Imagine you're at a community event like the Harvest Festival described in Maria's story. Practice introducing yourself, asking about others' backgrounds, sharing something about your own experiences, and responding to stories that others tell. Americans often use small talk to build relationships and find common ground. So learning to participate effectively in these conversations is crucial for social and professional success. Focus particularly on learning to ask follow-up questions that show interest and cultural awareness. Instead of just saying, "That's interesting," practice responses like, "That sounds like a real success story. You must have worked incredibly hard to build that from scratch," or "What you're describing reminds me of those small town values that seem so important in American communities." Advanced cultural concepts and regional variations. As we continue to explore the linguistic and cultural landscape of American English, it's important to understand that the United States is incredibly diverse, and the experiences and values illustrated in Maria's Vermont story represent just one facet of American life. Understanding regional variations and diverse American experiences will make you a more sophisticated English speaker and cultural interpreter. The New England region, where our story takes place, has particular characteristics that influence both language use and cultural values. New Englanders are often stereotyped as reserved, practical, and focused on tradition, but also as highly educated and socially progressive. The accent that challenged Maria is part of a broader linguistic landscape that includes the famous Boston accent with its dropped R sounds, but also includes various rural New England dialects that can be quite different from standard American English. New England's history as the birthplace of American education, with institutions like Harvard University, Yale University, and numerous prestigious preparatory schools, has created a regional culture that values intellectual achievement, historical preservation, and civic engagement. This background influences how New Englanders communicate, often with references to historical events, literary works, and educational experiences that might not resonate in other parts of the country. The concept of town meetings, which appears in Maria's story through community involvement in her restaurant opening, is particularly associated with New England. These democratic gatherings where community members directly participate in local government decisions represent an idealized form of American democracy that influences how New Englanders think about civic responsibility and community involvement. However, it's crucial to understand that American experiences vary dramatically by region. The small-town values celebrated in Maria's Vermont story might manifest very differently in a small town in Texas, Georgia, or Montana. Southern American culture, for example, places enormous emphasis on hospitality, family connections, and tradition. But these values are expressed through different customs, different language patterns, and different social expectations than those found in New England. Southern American English includes distinctive vocabulary, pronunciation patterns, and grammatical structures that differ significantly from the New England speech that Maria encountered. Expressions like y'all, you all, fixin' to, about to, might could, might be able to, and bless your heart, which can be either genuinely sympathetic or subtly condescending, are integral to Southern communication, but would sound foreign in Vermont. Western American culture, particularly in states like Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana, embodies many of the same values we see in Maria's story: self-reliance, entrepreneurship, and community spirit, but expresses them through different traditions and language patterns. The Western emphasis on individual freedom, connection to the land, and skepticism of government intervention creates a cultural context quite different from New England's more communitarian and education-focused approach. Urban American experiences also differ dramatically from the small-town narrative we've explored. Cities like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Miami offer entirely different models of the American dream, where success might be measured by different standards and achieved through different paths. Urban American English includes slang, cultural references, and communication patterns that reflect the fast-paced, diverse, and economically complex nature of city life. The concept of diversity itself means different things in different American contexts. In Maria's Vermont story, cultural diversity meant introducing Guatemalan traditions to a predominantly white rural community. But in a city like Miami, Los Angeles, or New York, diversity might mean navigating multiple languages, complex racial and ethnic dynamics, and economic disparities that create very different social experiences. Understanding these regional and cultural variations is essential for English learners who want to communicate effectively across different American contexts. The vocabulary, expressions, and cultural concepts that work well in one region might be misunderstood or seem out of place in another. Developing awareness of these differences helps you adapt your communication style to different audiences and situations. Business and professional communication. Insights Maria's entrepreneurial journey offers valuable insights into American business communication and professional relationships that extend far beyond restaurant management. Understanding how Americans approach business relationships, negotiate agreements, and build professional networks will serve you well in any career field. The relationship between Maria and her landlord Jim illustrates several important aspects of American business culture. First, Americans often make business decisions based on personal character assessment in addition to financial considerations. Jim's willingness to offer creative financing to Maria reflects a common American belief that investing in people with strong work ethics and good character often yields better long-term results than focusing solely on financial credentials. This approach to business relationships emphasizes the importance of building trust and demonstrating reliability in your professional interactions. Americans pay close attention to consistency between words and actions, follow through on commitments, and evidence of personal investment in outcomes. Maria's success at the Farmers markets served as a demonstration of her business acumen and work ethic that convinced Jim to take a risk on her restaurant venture. The collaborative approach to opening Abuela's Kitchen also demonstrates how American communities often rally around local businesses, particularly those owned by entrepreneurs who are seen as contributing to community character and economic vitality. This support isn't just about economic calculation. It reflects American values about supporting underdogs, encouraging entrepreneurship, and strengthening community bonds through local business success. In professional contexts, Americans typically expect direct communication, clear expectations, and regular updates on progress. The informal mentorship that Maria received from various community members reflects a common American approach to professional development that combines formal business, relationships with personal support and guidance. Learning to navigate these relationships, which often blend professional and personal elements, is crucial for career success in American contexts. American business communication also emphasizes the importance of storytelling and personal narrative in building professional relationships. Maria's success partly stemmed from her ability to share the story behind her empanadas, connecting her business to her personal history and cultural heritage. This approach reflects a broader American business tendency to value authenticity, personal connection, and narrative coherence in professional presentations. The concept of networking, which appears throughout Maria's story in the form of community connections leading to business opportunities, is fundamental to American professional culture. Americans typically view networking not as manipulation, but as relationship building that creates mutual opportunities for growth and success. Learning to participate effectively in networking activities, from formal business events to informal community gatherings, is essential for professional advancement. Modern American social issues and language evolution. While Maria's story presents a largely positive view of American community and opportunity, it's important to understand that contemporary American society grapples with complex social issues that influence language use and cultural discussions. As an English learner, understanding these issues and the vocabulary surrounding them will help you participate in current American discourse. Immigration, which is central to Maria's story, remains a highly debated topic in American politics and society. The language used to discuss immigration varies significantly depending on political perspective, regional background, and personal experience. Terms like undocumented, immigrants, illegal aliens, asylum seekers, and refugees carry different political and emotional connotations that influence how conversations about immigration proceed. Understanding these linguistic distinctions and their political implications helps you navigate discussions about immigration policy, community integration, and cultural diversity that appear regularly in American media and conversation. Maria's positive reception in Woodstock represents one possible immigrant experience, but it's important to recognize that immigrants in other communities or circumstances might face very different challenges and reception. Economic inequality, while not directly addressed in Maria's story, influences many discussions about the American dream and opportunity in contemporary America. Vocabulary related to economic class, social mobility, and economic policy appears frequently in American political discourse and media coverage. Terms like income inequality, social mobility, working class, middle class, economic opportunity, and wealth gap are essential for understanding current American political and social discussions. The concept of small town versus urban America, which provides context for Maria's Vermont experience, reflects broader cultural and political divisions in contemporary American society. These divisions influence everything from political elections to cultural preferences to economic policies. Understanding the language and concepts associated with rural-urban differences helps you interpret American news coverage, political discourse, and social commentary. Environmental consciousness, which appears subtly in Maria's story through the emphasis on local ingredients and seasonal eating, has become increasingly important in American culture and language. Vocabulary related to sustainability, climate change, local food systems, and environmental responsibility appears regularly in American conversation and media. Terms like farm to table, carbon footprint, sustainable practices, and locally sourced have become common in discussions about food, business, and lifestyle choices. Social media and digital communication have also transformed American language use in ways that affect both casual conversation and professional communication. While Maria's story predates some of the most recent changes, understanding how Americans use social media platforms, online review systems, and digital marketing has become essential for business success and social participation. As we conclude today's journey through Maria's story and our exploration of American English fluency, let's summarize the key insights and practical applications that will help you continue developing your language skills and cultural understanding. Maria's success in Woodstock demonstrates that English fluency involves much more than grammatical accuracy and vocabulary memorization. True fluency requires understanding cultural contexts, recognizing the emotional and social significance of certain expressions, and learning to participate effectively in the types of conversations and relationships that matter in American society. The vocabulary and expressions we've explored today, from the American dream to paying it forward to starting from scratch, are essential not because they're difficult or sophisticated, but because they carry cultural weight that makes them particularly useful for building relationships and demonstrating cultural awareness. These phrases appear regularly in American conversation, media, and literature because they represent concepts that Americans consider important and meaningful. The cultural concepts we've discussed, community spirit, entrepreneurship, regional diversity, and social mobility, provide frameworks for understanding American behavior, values, and social dynamics. Recognizing these concepts and learning to discuss them thoughtfully will help you participate more effectively in American academic, professional, and social contexts. The storytelling techniques illustrated in Maria's narrative, establishing character and setting, presenting challenges and growth, demonstrating community support, and concluding with transformation and broader meaning, reflect patterns that appear throughout American communication, from casual conversation to business presentations to political speeches. Learning to use these narrative structures will improve your ability to communicate persuasively and memorably. Most importantly, Maria's story demonstrates that successful language learning and cultural integration happen through genuine engagement with communities and meaningful contribution to shared goals. Language fluency develops not through isolated study, but through authentic communication in real situations where understanding and being understood matter for achieving important purposes. You continue your English learning journey. Remember that every conversation is an opportunity to practice not just language skills, but cultural understanding. Pay attention to the stories people tell, the values they express, and the ways they build relationships through communication. Notice how Americans use language to create connections, demonstrate respect, and achieve common goals. Practice telling your own stories using the vocabulary and cultural concepts we've explored. Share your experiences, cultural background, and perspectives in ways that build bridges with American speakers while maintaining your own authentic voice. Like Maria, you can contribute your unique perspective to American conversations, while developing the language skills and cultural knowledge that will help you achieve your own version of success and belonging. Remember that fluency is not just about sounding American. It's about communicating effectively, building meaningful relationships, and contributing positively to the communities where you live and work. Maria's story shows us that authentic engagement, persistent effort, and genuine care for others create opportunities for both language development and personal growth that no textbook or classroom can provide. The American dream that Maria achieved wasn't just about individual success. It was about finding ways to contribute to something larger than herself while building the life she envisioned. Your English learning journey can follow a similar path, where language development becomes a means of building relationships, pursuing opportunities, and making positive contributions to your adopted communities. Keep practicing, keep engaging, and keep sharing your own stories. Every conversation is a step toward greater fluency, deeper cultural understanding, and more meaningful participation in the rich, diverse tapestry of American life. Thank you for joining me on the Fluent Storybook, and I'll see you next time for another journey into English fluency through the power of storytelling. Final vocabulary review and practice suggestions. Before we close today's episode, let's review the essential vocabulary and expressions that will help you sound more natural and culturally aware in your English conversations. Take time to practice these words and phrases in your own sentences, and try to use them in real conversations over the coming week. Key expressions to master. The American dream, starting from scratch, paying it forward. Small town values, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Extended family, postcard perfect, fall foliage, at cost, calculated risk, grand marshal, and barn raising. Approach, cultural concepts to understand and discuss, community spirit, entrepreneurship, regional diversity, networking, storytelling in professional contexts, immigration experiences, economic opportunity, and rural versus urban American experiences. Practice suggestions. Tell someone about a person you admire using at least 3 expressions from today's lesson. Describe a beautiful place using postcard perfect and other descriptive vocabulary. Discuss a time when someone helped you or when you helped someone else using paying it forward and related concepts. Share your own cultural traditions and compare them to American traditions using the vocabulary and concepts we've learned. Most importantly, remember that language learning is a journey, not a destination. Every conversation, every story, and every cultural exchange contributes to your growing fluency and understanding. Keep practicing, keep engaging, and keep believing in your ability to achieve your own version of the American dream through the power of effective communication. Until next time, this is the Fluent Storybook, where every story is a step toward greater English fluency and cultural understanding.